very, very exciting and, something which everyone is wanting to understand a little more detail. Also, the, kind of leaders or that we have on the dais need no introduction. I think we have Makran from Volvo. We have Mr. Anirudh Kulkarni from Tata Motors. We have Uday from Omega CK. We have Anurag, who's come from IPL Tech. And we have Akshat, from Exponent Energy. So I think, we have a perfect audience. We have a perfect, kind of dais set up, with players from different areas in the commercial vehicle segment, right from small commercial vehicles to buses to trucks, even three-wheelers. And even we have someone from the charging side or on the last mile mobility side who's into providing services for last mile mobility. So just to set the context, we've come a long way, especially with respect to alternate powertrains, in the commercial vehicle segment. CNG is something, which has seen a significant shift, especially in the light commercial vehicles or in the intermediate commercial vehicle space, wherein the penetration has been largely in the range of 10 to 15% over the last couple of years. Of course, there were times in between where, you saw huge differential between pricing of CNG and diesel in favor of CNG, where we saw CNG share increasing to even 40% in segments like intermediate commercial vehicles. But post price corrections, I think, the Russia-Ukraine war coming in and, kind of significant increase in prices of LNG, which we import largely from automotive perspective, because most of the gas that we have locally is used for PNG purpose. So from that perspective, the prices were really high and the share settled at somewhere about 10 to 15%. Then looking at the EV story, which is actually unfolded in the commercial vehicle segment. So I would like to talk about it from two perspectives. At one end, you have buses, where you are consistently seeing about 6 to 7% electrification over the last 2 years, largely driven by, the fleet programs that the government of India is running under gross cost contracts, and the new PM E-Bus Seva, which has got launched for about 50,000 odd buses, which was announced in the budget. So these are two things, which are largely driving it. And on the other hand, if you look at the small commercial vehicles, we have players like Tata Motors and Omega CK, largely in the LCV space, if I have to say so, and which are driving, kind of some kind of volumes and are seeing some momentum there. On the other hand, if you look at three-wheelers, the scenario is very, very heartening. If I talk about the L5 category of three-wheelers, which are largely comparable or equivalent to the Bajajes and Piaggios that you see on street, in the cargo segment, almost 28% of cargo vehicles are now electric, which is a significant number. And on the passenger side also, almost 17% is electric. And on the passenger side, about 63% is contributed by CNG. So from that perspective, we are seeing significant momentum, on the EV side, on the three-wheeler space specifically. Just to get some perspective and understand everyone's view, let's start from, say, Anirudh, who's probably representing one of the largest commercial vehicle manufacturers in India, Tata Motors. So Anirudh, Tata Motors has products across the spectrum, right from small commercial vehicles all the way to 55-tonners and even buses. You've seen, a significant change in the way alternate powertrains are, playing out. I spoke about CNG, diesel, and BOV largely, but, even petrol in the small commercial vehicle space, especially post BS6 coming in, people talking about H2Is, fuel cell, multiple technologies, kind of playing out in the powertrain space specifically. What are your views and, at an industry level, how do you see this folding out? And also if you could throw some light on, or if you want to talk about, what is it that Tata Motors is specifically doing and looking at, from this perspective?
Okay, so good afternoon everybody, and thank you Hemalji for the 2023 was the warmest year, right? When we see, when the record making started, from say 1850, and we also observed that average temperature of this century was almost 1.18 degree more than the previous century, and then it was actually more by 0.15 degree compared to what we did a measurement in 2016. Correct. So this is, I think, a very important data point with which probably the entire automotive industry has started working toward a sustainability journey. And there, when we see what was done in the western part of the world and what we are currently doing in India, it is slightly different. And then in India, we're looking at as a commercial vehicle space, which is as a diverse product portfolios are there, and also there are many markets, segments, sub-segment, micro-segment, various duty cycle which are there, which are actually governing the usage of the fuel. And I always mention that our generation is the luckiest generation who has seen almost all emission norms. We have also seen all fuels, and also I think we are going to witness the transition to the hydrogen. But when we see the segmentation, which you just mentioned about that, we have a small commercial vehicle, which is ranging from, say, 1.5 ton going up to, say, 4 ton. We have a light commercial, which are from 4 ton to going to, say, 7.5 ton, intermediate commercial vehicle or a medium heavy commercial going up to 19 ton, and then trucks, which are up to 55 tonner, 48 tonner, and then you have a sub-segment like a truck, tractor, tippers, and then you have people movers, which are from a 9-seater going up to 60, 70 seaters. So this calls for a fuel strategy which is particularly designed for that duty cycle, for that segment, and for that particular market usage point of view. And there, what we feel as the industry or what we feel as the Tata Motors that this segment will have a different fueling strategy to reach their net zero journey. And net zero journey from emission perspective, I'm saying, and also from a perspective of, say, meeting, say, carbon targets and everything. So if you see the journey from a present fuels to journey to a near zero fuels, near zero emission fuels, from near zero emission fuels to a net zero emission fuel, will always pass through a transition fuels. And as you rightly mentioned, there are going to be transition toward the CNG, there's transition going to be towards LNG, transition toward ethanol blending, biodiesel, H2 and hydrogen is becoming very prominent fuel nowadays. And also like a mixture of the hydrogen and CNG or a bio-CNG, all those fuels are going to coexist. And for a particular segment, and I just start like a small commercial, since you mentioned about that, small commercial vehicle will have a many fuels coexisted till it migrate to a net zero fuel. So it will have a gasoline, which is the first time we are seeing that a small cargo vehicle has now started using gasoline, which was never thought of. Yes. It is like a CNG is very becoming a prominent fuel. You are also seeing the electrification transition has happened very fast on this segment. And now coming to like a people mover or a, say, public transport segment, which is the buses, this is actually governed by the regulation and also requirement which are stated by the state transport unit. And there we are seeing that diesel, CNG, LNG and electrification are the fuels which are currently used. And I take a very proudly, I can mention that Tata Motors become the only OEM, the first OEM, who are actually running 15 hydrogen fuel cell vehicle buses in Delhi, practically. So this fuel exists, and the transition which we are seeing is from a transition fuels to a near zero emission fuel and to net zero emission fuels. And that really is a journey which we are working about there. But important fuel is now hydrogen, onto which I think the industry is really working, whether it's a fuel cell technology or through a hydrogen ICE. This is what my views are.
Sure. Thanks, Anirudh. I'll come back to you with a question later. But, kind of moving to Anurag, kind of, if you actually see your journey, or I would say IPL Tech's journey, you guys are backed by a strong group, Murugappa Group, which has got into electrification in various areas. Montra for three-wheelers. Now you are largely leading the IPL Tech business, which is in the electric truck space. Nobody would have thought of getting into the truck segment with respect to BOV. Everybody was largely looking at either smaller vehicles, which were, kind of, if I have to put it in a very simple language, low-hanging fruits where electrification could be faster because of better cost economics. And, in case of trucks where the value of this truck will itself be about 1.15 to 1.4 crores, depending on, the powertrain that it has. So, how has your journey been? How are you seeing this, kind of play out? Because you've sold a few hundreds of vehicles, which are already running on road. So how has your experience been in this space?
Thanks, Hemal. A very big thank you to CV Forum, and this is my second conference. Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks to CV Forum. This is my second consecutive year, and last year when I was here, we had nothing much to speak that point of time because we were starting to deliver the vehicles that point of time as IPL Tech Electric, and we remain as the only company in heavy commercial vehicle space to get into electric vehicle field. Now the good news that I would like to first share is that from last year and this year, we have been able to sell around 150 vehicles which are on road, which has cumulatively done around 25 lakh kilometers successfully. And this has been sold to many flagship companies in cement and steel industry, also FMCG. With this, when you ask about the journey, and you know that heavy commercial vehicle space has been largely a duopoly of two players, more than 75 years they have been selling. So it was not that easy for us to get into this, into the market and then make a sale out there. This industry has largely been risk averse and has grown on herd mentality. So breaking those kind of shackles mindsets was very, very uphill task for us. But last 1 year, we have been able to touch base with almost 500 plus critical strategic customers, both on the B2B side and B2C side. So the journey has been very learning, though challenging, because there has been absolutely no support in terms of government subsidy, whether fiscal or non-fiscal. But one thing is there that the awareness which has gone into the market has been very, very high. Like earlier somebody would be asking what is IPL Tech Electric doing and why you got into this field, like you have asked rightfully. So one major thing that has driven this as a business case is that company, Murugappa Group, wanted to be in productive segment, productive end of the segment, where you can sweat the asset. This electric vehicle, the more you sweat, the more value it gives back to you. That is the most important thing that we need to keep. An electric vehicle need to be either charging or running. It should not be standing for loading and unloading, which has been the biggest problem in the logistics space today. And every company today is actually suffering on account of this. When we meet any cement industry, steel industry, followed by ports, people who are doing this railway siding job, everywhere you see there is a problem. In the logistic, everybody is looking for 15 to 20% of freight reduction. How can you get that freight reduction unless you have a alternate fuel which can make a business sense for you? The current problem that we are facing is on the how to fasten the adoption of electric vehicles, because the price differential in vehicle today is almost 3.5 times the current diesel vehicle, which we are trying to crack today. That is.
Just one point there, Anurag. You touched upon the fact, and it's a no-brainer that today EVs are much more cheaper operationally as compared to an ICE vehicle. But there are a lot of challenges, kind of acquisition cost, the one that you highlighted. Second, because of developing or evolving technologies, we still have vehicles which have a range of say 170, 180 odd kilometers going all the way to 250, 260 kilometers. On national highways, you will generally run on longer leads. So again, charging infra is another, kind of challenge. Plus, if you look at financing, that has also not evolved. So in that stage, how easy or difficult is it, when we look at it from a practical perspective to convince a customer? Because, large fleet operators, I'm sure, would largely be aware that, operating cost is lower. But the ecosystem that has to be developed from an EV perspective, that is still seeing a lot of challenge. And if you would want to share some experience, plus also what is it that you would expect from different stakeholders, to make this more adaptable at large?
So Himal, definitely adoption of these electric vehicles will happen not only basis the reduction in carbon dioxide emission, but market or customer is looking for a freight reduction. That is the moot point of the entire thing. How do you make it is very important. So as far as the energy cost is concerned, Like the energy cost of running this heavy duty electric vehicle is around 8 to 10 rupees a kilometer as compared to 35 to 40 rupees a kilometer for a ICE vehicle. Now that is a kind of a differential, but when you get into the capex calculation, then where the equation goes bad. So how to solution is to actually do the financial re-engineering of the entire package, which is the solutioning part. How do you bring the longer tenure to the financing that is being done? That is one big thing that we are working on. We have tried, and leasing is one way out, which we are working, and we have been able to give some packages in terms of high tenure leasing options. Okay, that is one thing. Another thing is that when you talk of ecosystem, so there is a customer, a company, who is looking for freight reduction. The operator who is going to be actually buying the vehicle, he is saying that companies have already squeezed me out. How can I give further freight reduction? Then he sees me as a OEM, I am the only OEM and a very new, who from somewhere has come out and started making a heavy commercial vehicle. That is one thing. Fourth is the charging infrastructure, and fifth is the financier. All this need to be actually played along, like it's orchestra playing. Unless the orchestra, you get the right strings, the sound is not going to be very musical. So this is what we have actually worked upon. We have given complete peace of mind to the end customer through a 10-year, 9 lakh kilometer, fully loaded annual maintenance package. Then we have worked on a 10-year leasing solution, which is again a very, very strong thing which the industry has not seen till now. So we have been disrupting, and we have been telling the customers that whether you go for any fuel today, I have done a lot of unit economics, which I said 500 interactions means 500 different use cases of unit economics we have done in all the industries. And we found that current ICE vehicle, which is a diesel vehicle, is not making any cash flow positive on a month-to-month basis. Okay. After the OBD2 implementation on 1st April 2023, it has further worsened the situation, to be very frank to you. So today, the biggest dilemma in the country is that on one side you want to go for a cleaner fuel, but you are running the most aged vehicle in India, which has never been witnessed in this industry. 9 to 10 year vehicles is in operation today in India, which has never been the case ever. Operators are not replacing the vehicle. The logistic manager of a company, he cannot go back to his management that I have reduced the logistic cost basis the BS4 fuel. So chassis cost of a ICE has gone up by almost 25-30%, but the freight has been largely in the market at BS3 or BS4 levels. Now this is the biggest challenge. So from us, we are fighting a battle, standalone battle with little support, and we have made our own business case. And that is how we have been able to do this 150 numbers units in this, which is a 115 lakh vehicle plus 11.5 lakh of charger. This makes it like you are selling a product of almost 1.25, 1.30 CR. Now, we have been approaching government with some fiscal and non-fiscal benefit, like FAME 3 whenever it comes. So a lot of industry discussions have happened. It has been approached through CM also. We are looking for around 10,000 to 20,000 kilowatt per kilowatt kind of a subsidy basis the battery. Another big disadvantage is that the payload of the vehicle is not changed. So we have asked for at least a 5% additional payload, because the battery weight which is there, it is giving you on like-to-like basis around 2.5 tons of disadvantage. Then comes the some non-fiscal. Another thing is coming from the priority sector lending. Like how can you include electric vehicles as part of priority sector lending? This is another big thing. And then something to do on the highway part of it. How can you look at creating a charging infra? How can you subsidize it? Because creating that charging infra on a highway is around 50 lakhs. Plus the running cost of the vehicle on the operator goes up. So that is another thing. And then we have also requested government to announce a policy on the solar, so that you can make it net zero. Okay. So if you are looking for a net zero, that can only happen when your grid is clean. So these are some of the things which has come to my mind while you have asked. Thank you.
Thanks for your view, Anurag. Thank you. Coming to you, Uday, you've been one of the pioneers, when it comes to E3-wheelers. And also, with MK1, you were one of the first ones in the SCV space, if I have to say so. just, you know, kind of before Tata Motors launched EACV, I think you had your launch at that point of time. You've traversed a long way, you know, in this electrification journey, and especially three-wheelers has been quite exciting. You know, the adoption levels from e-com segment, etc., has been very, very good, especially on the cargo side. And with ESG norms playing out globally, you know, players like Amazon, Flipkart also have some commitments, you know, that they've made globally, because of which they would like to enforce this on their user community also, which has also led to a lot of proliferation of electric vehicles. Financing was a major concern. Has that played out, or it still continues to be one bottleneck, and do you see that, you know, the growth potential is significant? One more question that I would add on to this is, what we've also seen is in the passenger side, though, you know, electrification is 16-17%, which is phenomenal. Even there, what we are seeing as a trend is districts or areas where CNG penetration is low or where CNG pumps are not available, we are seeing electrification catching up faster, especially on the passenger side. But where there is CNG available, we are still seeing some inhibition, maybe because of the ecosystem also. So, you know, your views on this would be really.
Well, first of all, yeah, thank you for you know, CBF for hosting, and always great to be here. You know, I'll answer that financing question later, but you know, yeah, I've been in this game for quite some time. I, you know, after 30 years in the U.S., I decided needed to come back here, U.S. and Europe, to specifically stay in Delhi, where the AQI index is so beautiful all year round, and you know, I think a couple of things, and I just want to add to, you know, I know election का season चल रहा है, और you know, इस बार 400 पार तो नहीं हुए, लेकिन हम, you know, we are coming up with vehicles, we've aligned with Exponent, जो हर बार 400 पार करेंगे, right? So I think, you know, technology is changing, you know, passenger vehicle demand, in my view, and you know, a lot of you might hate me for that, I think ICE or CNG को ख़त्म करना है और हर जगह electric. We also, I'll tell you one more thing, on, you know, the Le Mans race that happens in, you know, in France on the 13th or the 14th. One of my three-wheelers right before the race is going to do 950 kilometers on a hydrogen tank in Le Mans, and we're going to bring that to the one-ton truck. But coming back to you, look, don't ask for the government for handouts. It's just not going to happen. This is not the United States where Uncle Joe Biden will hand you a check, or this is not Europe. I think you've got to make the TCO model work. Why did we do? We worked with partners like Exponent and many others to make the TCO model work. Is country mein, you know, we come to these conferences, and I'm very bold and straight up. You know, we talk about the environment. Nobody gives a monkey about the environment. Meri jeb mein kya bacha, bas wahi sochte hain. Okay, you talked about Amazon and you talked about Flipkart. I did tests with them all over the world. I spent 8 months doing tests with them in the Middle East. ESG के credit लेने के बाद जब freight वालों के पास जाते हो, वो कहते हैं सर हमारी cost saving कहाँ है वो बताओ, छोड़ो ये. So look, everything goes down to the TCO model. And I think whether it's electric, whether it's hydrogen, whatever technology you're talking about, अगर scale चाहिए तो TCO model, और इस country में चाहिए खासकर, तो आप honestly give the TCO model. Don't depend on the government. If they give you a handout, great. If they don't, well then, you know, build a business a long term. And I think one more thing. I think the three-wheeler story or the SCV, you know, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of players come out, but scale चाहिए, right? I think Rome wasn't built in one day. और हमें क्या है कि हम इंडिया में आपने 150 vehicle किए, बहुत ही अच्छा है. आप इसी scale में चलेंगे तो maybe 1,50,000 vehicle भी आगे जाके करेंगे. I don't think, you know, in this game, electrification, whether it is, you know, the Tata, the Mahindras, or who, you know, all the big boys and girls, it gives a chance for everybody to play in this game, because we're all playing, we're all playing at an even field. Yes, the Tatas and the Mahindras have huge amount of capital, and that matters. But this market is giving you the opportunity to build products. And if some technology, if I align with Exponent and come up with something, I can give a run for the money to the big boys and girls. And I think that's going to make the Tatas to build a better product. And that's going to make others to make a better product. And if everybody makes a better product, only one person wins. It's the consumer. And it's an election year. कंज्यूमर ने आज बता दिया है कि आप कुछ भी बोलो लेकिन आपको काम करना पड़ेगा. And I think that's what we need to do. And I say, you know, I think there is a lot of development. There's a lot of green plates across this country. There's a lot of momentum. Time लगता है, हो जाएगा. इतनी जल्दी मत करो. सब ABCD राउंड पे मत फोकस करो. क्वालिटी पे फोकस करो. Long term. That's why Tata is there for such a long time. That's why Volvo is there for such a long time. And I'm absolutely sure you're going to be there for the long time. And I think, you know, this country needs clean energy. We owe it to our future generations, to all the young kids, you know, all the men and women of this country. Coming back on financing. Financing was a problem, right? Now, I think financing is available for the right product. See, there was no you know, secondary market. The problem, सबसे बड़ी आई है, financing costs are so high because people don't know what the resale value of a Tata Ace Electric will be. We are all working, I'm specifically working this year to give a second-hand market for vehicles. The day you do that, financing costs, ICE का cost इसलिए नीचे है कि there's an easy second-hand. Tata Ace बेचनी है, Mahindra का कोई, you know, कुछ भी जीतो, कुछ किसी को भी बेचना है, there's a secondary market. So financing is something that is much better today than we first started the journey 5-6 years ago. मुझे कोई financing की problem नहीं, but मुझे एक problem है. वो trucks जो चलाता है, वो जो 3-wheeler चलाता है, वो that man and woman is at the lowest end of the rung of the, and usko 20-25% interest rate. So that's where I think, you know, we have to have a public-private partnership, and I think that's where, you know, that is where I think a little bit more effort has to be done. Hopefully the election is done. Now there'll be focus on FAME 3 or whatever comes, right? But all I want is a consistent policy. I don't want a policy upar niche. You know, there are people who are going to blow the red light. Doesn't mean humne sabhi log violators hain, right? I think we need a government that thinks through this, has a long-term policy, and you know, it brings investment long-term. I still think, you know, I'm a big Martin Luther King follower. I have a dream that, you know, all of these people here, you know, whose kids are going to be the future leaders, who's going to make this country the third largest economy in the world, and it's going to have a great name. That green energy sustainability is there. I'm committed to it. I got nowhere to go. You know, I left Switzerland to come down here to work down on the front lines after 30 years. So I think alliances, financing is going to be there. There's a lot of work. Build better product. Build a secondary market. Don't be scared to fall. Failure is part of this game, right? And I think, you know, 5 or 10 years from now, I would hope young men like Akshat are building these, you know, beautiful companies that are building, putting India towards the cutting edge of, you know, of green energy. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you. You know, a few points that you made, you know, long-term policy clarity, very, very important. And also secondary or resale market, you know, very, very critical, you know, for any alternate technology, you know, to kind of develop, whether it's EVs or otherwise. You know. Before coming to you, Makrand, you know, one last question on the EV, jumping the gun and coming to you on the hydrogen front. Akshat, you know, you've been one of the very critical, you know, kind of legs in ensuring that these vehicles move, you know, by providing the energy that is required for these vehicles to move. You know, you've been working on this, whether it's, you know, smaller powertrains or, you know, now even testing larger ones as we spoke about. Charging has always been spoken about as a inhibition, you know, kind of that, you know, it will not let this industry grow. We need a lot of public charging infrastructure, which is coming up, of course. But the second important point, or the most important point which is touted about, is the time for charging. Wherein you guys have come up with something wherein you could charge, say, in about 15 to 20 minutes, which is phenomenal, and could, you know, change the way in which, you know, people are looking at electric vehicles. So, you know, would you want to talk about or walk us through, you know, what is it that you guys are trying to do, especially on the charging space? And, you know, what is it that you are doing, you know, when you are, in a way, tying up with players in the last mile mobility space, helping them, you know, kind of improvise their asset utilization and lower cost in a way?
Thank you for this question, and thank you to the CV Forum for having me on the stage. Very pertinent question, and at Exponent Energy, what we have been trying to do is we do a 15-minute charging for any vehicle category. So what we are able to do is we can take a two-wheeler or take a bus or a truck, and we do a 0 to 100% charge in 15 minutes. We don't talk about a 20 to 60% charge or 30 to 60% charge, as a lot of companies across the globe talks about. And to us, mobility is all about freedom. As a consumer, when I think about mobility, I want to do whenever I want. I want to go how much longer I want, and I want to do whatever I want in life out there. And over time, over generations, people have tried to become faster and be more flexible out there. Now, today, when we talk about logistics industry, we are not changing the consumer. The fleet operator or the consumer is the same. We are trying to electrify that journey. That today you are using an IC or CNG fuel in the vehicle itself. How can I use a better, more cleaner, more energy efficient fuel to run my operations for both environment purposes and, as I rightly said, the TCO has to make sense. In the end, we're building a for-profit business, everybody. So TCO has to make sense out there. Now, when we talk about the journey, today, a lot of work has gone and a lot of commendable work has been done by all the panelists and the companies when you're making electric vehicle, and it's actually more fun. It's better to drive an electric vehicle today. It has better torque, lower vibration, and you can do a lot of stuff. The vehicle life is not in question. You can have an electric vehicle and run for 10, 15 years as you would do an IC vehicle itself. But when we talk about the mass adoption of electric vehicle out there, energy is the missing link. When you talk to a customer about, hey, why don't you take an electric vehicle? He talks about, hey, I cannot charge overnight. I do not have a dedicated parking space. And this is a very India-specific problem. We did a survey, and for a last mile mobility space, a three-wheeler or a four-wheeler, a small commercial vehicle, 70% of India parks on the road. Now, if I tell them to go electric and give them a concept of overnight parking and charging, this just doesn't work in India. Second question, so maybe 30% of the India can still take electric vehicles, and looking at 24% three-wheelers getting electrified on cargo, 17% getting electrified on passenger. But where does the remaining 70% go? Second, I am driving a vehicle. How much battery is enough for me? Now, I want to do 80 kilometers a day. I want to do 100 kilometers. I want to do 150 kilometers. As a consumer, I want flexibility to do 250 kilometers a day, 400 kilometers a day, and sometimes I don't want to drive at all. That's what I have been doing in an IC vehicle space. And I want that same freedom and flexibility to do that. So if I go to a charging station and I talk about a 2-hour charging or a 3-hour charging, it's not good enough for me. I don't want to go run 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers, and then wait for 2 hours to charge my vehicle. And hence, I'll always ask about more and larger battery capacity. And then as a consumer, I'll also crib about the high cost of the vehicle. Because higher the battery capacity, the upfront cost goes up. So I think India needs a very different solution. We need smaller batteries to keep vehicle price very affordable. India needs public charging ecosystem, and you talk about public charging ecosystem, you only can scale that up once you are doing rapid charging. So what we do is we do 15-minute charging, 0 to 100%. It also makes sense for a lot of charge point operators. Today, if I look at charging as a business, the biggest cost for the charge point operator is the real estate cost. So the metric that he is chasing is how much units of energy I can sell in a day from the same piece of land. Now, if I'm charging 3 vehicles or 4 vehicles in a day, it is a terrible business to be in. Instead, if I can charge 30 or 40 vehicles from the same piece of land in a day, I am selling much more energy. All my fixed costs get amortized over 30 to 40 vehicles. It's better for the user. I can bring down his charging cost and better his TCO. At the same time, I give him enough flexibility to go and drive everywhere. And that's fundamentally what we have been trying to do. And we have deployed a lot of solutions working with companies like Omega Seki, where we have deployed more than 1,500, 2,000 vehicles on road, which are commercially running in different applications. Running like an IC vehicle, having the complete freedom and flexibility to run the vehicle 24 hours. We believe vehicles should always be on the road. Charging, 15 minutes is 0 to 100%. Our customers spend maybe 10, 12 minutes per charging session because nobody practically comes at 0 out there. And now we are also looking at higher category vehicles like an intercity bus, where you talk about, let's say Bangalore, Hyderabad for an example. It's a 600-kilometer route. Today, a lot of electrification on the bus has happened on sub 350 kilometers route, where you can package a 400 or 450 kilowatt hour battery pack and run it on one shot. But you can't have a solution or have the customers wait for 1.5 hours when you are charging on the way. So a 600, 700 kilometer route is becoming very, very difficult to electrify. What we say is, hey, optimize the battery size, install a 15-minute charging solution on the go, and the buses already take a couple of bio breaks in between, and you can get the vehicle up and running in that sense. So we are trying to see how we can play a role to electrify that. And it's an ecosystem play out there. When you're looking at an IC world itself, an automotive company and an energy company work independently. As a consumer, I interacted with them independently. I used to buy a vehicle from a Tata or a Volvo or any other Mahindra as a player, and I went to an energy company for my fuel needs. Today, the performance, the life, the financing, everything is dependent on vehicle plus battery. And energy for EVs is battery plus charging. So it's half on the vehicle, half on the charger itself. So when I'm making a decision to buy an electric vehicle, I am also making a choice of an energy partner out there. So as an energy player, we partner with multiple OEMs across different categories to ensure that the consumer has the option to, leverage whatever vehicle he wants, but at the same time, his energy needs are not shackled. He gets a longer term financing, he gets flexibility to earn more and run as many kilometers as he wants to do that. Adding to that, we also offer energy as a service, that today you pay a diesel on a per kilometer cost. As an energy, we think you should have the same flexibility. You should not be forced to pay a 1.5 crore, 2 crore rupees for a bus. You should pay the same cost as a diesel bus for a bus without the battery, because battery is part of the energy ecosystem, and you can do pay per kilometer on a battery or charging as such, and we've already done that.
Thanks, kind of to throw light on the innovative ways that you are adopting, to propel electrification in the country. Makarand, last but not the least, kind of coming to you, sorry to make you wait for such a long time. Volvo Group, globally has been doing a lot of work, in the alternate powertrain space, since a long time. If you look at, what's happening on the hydrogen front, globally, H2Is or, even fuel cell, what is it that, is the difference that there, in those countries, maybe largely Europe and North America as compared to what's happening here in India? Because, though we have things like a PLI for hydrogen, for us, reaching where we are in terms of CNG has taken almost a decade and a half. For hydrogen to come through, because, dispensation, storage, there are many more challenges, when it comes to hydrogen, whether it is ICE or, it's in the form of fuel cell. How do you see this, entire piece moving? If you could bring in your global perspective and then, maybe some specific points with respect to India would be really helpful.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, CVF, for having me here and inviting me for this panel. And before I answer your question, Himal, I would like to give a little perspective about Volvo Group. So basically, Volvo Group is a Swedish company located at Gothenburg, and we are in the business of heavy-duty commercial vehicle segment, plus construction equipment, and plus Volvo Penta is another vertical which is in the marine engine and industrial engine development segment. So what target we are seeing, basically, by 2040, we have to be carbon neutral. That is Volvo's internal target. And to achieve this target, what we are saying that our major markets are Europe and USA. So in these two markets, what solutions we are trying to is today you can, if you look at the current contribution from the different powertrains, so almost 95 to 98% of the powertrains available in these countries, or what we are selling, is IC engine based. But we do see that by 2040, we are going to come down drastically in terms of IC engine based. We are not saying that we are going to close or we are going to shut off the IC engine. The percentage of IC engine will be lowered by 2040. And this will get replaced by the either hydrogen powered powertrains or the electrified powertrains. When I say that hydrogen powered powertrains, it could be the hydrogen IC engine, or it could be also the fuel cell electric vehicles. And when I say that my IC engine will still continue, but it will run on the renewable fuels, or let's say fossil-free fuels. It could be green hydrogen, it could be the LNG, it could be the HVO, it could be the renewable diesel. So by 2040, this is our target. And what we are saying that the contribution from these three technologies. These three will be the key technologies. And if you talk about, so since I work myself on hydrogen topic, so I would like to focus a little bit more on the hydrogen. When it comes to the hydrogen IC engine, so there are various technologies among the hydrogen IC engine which gives you different efficiencies. It depends on the injection technologies, port fuel injection, low pressure direct injection, high pressure direct injection. So currently our major focus is on the high pressure direct injection. So whatever the commercialized product we will offer in by end of this decade, it will come up with the high pressure direct injection, which will be up to 250 to 300 bar fuel injection pressure inside the cylinder. And for that, we are been taking the advantage of our LNG powertrain, which is already launched a few years back. So it's a similar technology. This LNG powertrain or LNG injection technology is coming from the Westport Fuel System. It's a Canadian-based company. And if you're following the recent news that we are forming a joint venture with the Westport Fuel Company, it will get rolled by sometime next month. So we are going to take advantage of our LNG ecosystem to bring the hydrogen powertrain H2 for H2 ICE. And in parallel, we are also working on LPDI and PFI. So we are going to see that which technology will make a better presence in which market. Because this will also depend on which market, how they define the zero emission vehicle. Okay, so is it completely, if they are saying that I don't want any emission from my exhaust, then only I can say that this is a zero emission vehicle. Then it will be difficult for the H2Is. But many markets are still going to say that, okay, certain amount of CO2 or certain amount of NOx is allowed. So those kind of markets, I would say that will get benefited from H2Is technology. And long-term solution, yes, obviously it's going to be a fuel cell electric vehicle, which is based on our BEV platform, basically. It's nothing but a battery electric vehicle powered by the fuel cell. Whereas for fuel cell, I can say that we are working jointly with the Daimler Group. And there is a joint venture company called Cellcentric, who is basically developing the fuel cell for both of us. And the message I'm trying to give is that in this new era, doing everything independently or in-house is going to be a very, very costly affair. So partnership is new leadership. So we are looking at the solutions where we say that maybe if we can partner with somebody, we can share the cost of development. And from fuel cell perspective, it is very important. The various panelists talk about the TCO. So TCO is the key word in case of any technology. I completely agree on this. So to have the TCO parity for the fuel cell electric vehicle, I think it will take a little bit more time as compared to the H2ICE technology. Because there is an advantage in terms of H2ICE that we can still utilize the existing ecosystem and the complete value chain of the IC engine technology, which is a well-proven technology, and we do completely believe in the pros and cons of this. Whereas fuel cell is completely new technology, we are yet to learn, and we are now learning on this. So if you talk about the Volvo Group globally, so currently we have a couple of mule trucks or the proof of concept trucks running in Europe for the fuel cell technology, and very soon we will also have the H2ICE trucks will be running. The application of these trucks, either H2ICE or FCV, will be based on which kind of a segment you're trying to run. So basically, if you look at if my target is to have, let's say, 200,000 kilometers per year mileage, and my energy density or energy requirement is quite high, then I do see that on those market segments or those long-haul segments, the fuel cell or H2ICE will really make sense. Whereas my mileage is comparatively very less per year, and if my energy density is required is also comparatively low, the electrification might help over there. So we are not saying that we will go with only one technology. We do believe that there is no single bullet for this solution. And since we are a part of Science-Based Target Initiative, we are signatory of Paris Agreement, we do see that in Europe, this is taken very seriously. The one key point I can say that in Europe, the society is much more aware about the bad impact or the CO2 impact. Whereas that's why many of these technologies are driven by the demand from the market. Whereas in India, I do see it may be initially or currently driven by the government focus or government policies. And this could be a little bit impact on how fast we can penetrate in the market as compared to Europe or as compared to India.
Thanks,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you.
Before concluding, I think one question, possibly to you, Anirudh, you are you are heading the engineering research center for Tata Motors. Hence thought of posing this question to you. When you develop these platforms, whether it is EV, whether it's, hydrogen, fuel cell, there is a lot of pressure globally to, reduce carbon emissions. Every part that you procure, especially if you look at in Europe, as, Makarand also mentioned, CO2 is something that has been looked at very, very closely. And similarly, when this newer age ecosystem gets developed, there'll be a lot of, recycling that you'll have to do with respect to batteries and a few other parts. So circular economy is something, that comes into play very, very closely. How, as an OEM, are you looking at this? And, are we really working on this concept at this point of time, or it's more in thin air and, more followed globally, but at this point of time, it's largely driven only from a TCO perspective?
No. So I think I will try to answer, but I'm mindful of the time. I think we already ended our session, and allow me to slightly give longish answer.
Sure.
That when we see our present products, which are flying in India right now, not from Tata Motors I'm saying, as a commercial vehicle industry I'm saying, a lot of focus right now is happening on the energy efficiency point of view, which is leading to carbon reduction. Correct? So the energy efficiency measure could be working on a next generation bearings, working on a next generation tires, lightweighting technologies, drag reduction, working on, say, engine efficiencies, calibration part of that, working on, say, new piston. So all those major right now, the Indian automotive industry is putting a lot of efforts at this point of time, because you cannot immediately transit to a EV or a fuel cell, because that will be a gradual journey from 2027, 2030 onwards. So we have to continue putting a lot of engineering efforts, the R&D efforts in working on those efficiencies, which is indirectly or also directly reducing the carbon emissions, which is emitted by the vehicle, which is the scope 3, which is a part of, as he was
Got it.
mentioning, the science-based target, scope 3 targets are there. So that is one part. When we see about the electrification, hydrogen or fuel cell part of that, it is very important that you have to demonstrate a pioneering technologies. When you say about the pioneering technologies, it is not about the a conversion of a present vehicle to an electric, or conversion of present vehicle to an hydrogen, or like this. So a lot of engineering efforts are right now being put in India, working on, say, efficient design of electric vehicle, efficient design of, say, hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, efficient design of hydrogen H2 ICE vehicles and
So
everything.
newer
And when we
platforms.
talk
in a
about
way.
that efficient, what is meaning of efficient is, like we have to transit to a present vehicle architecture. But when you move to next, how are you deciding, say, energy density of the battery? What is like a gravimetric efficiency? What is my volumetric efficiency of that? Is my motor efficient enough? Is my, say, regeneration strategy, which are progressive and which are really giving, not allowing to lose a single kilowatt or single watt from the present battery pack? Am I using a right, say, the tires? Or am I having a really lightweight, which I can compensate the battery weight, which has got increasing, and then working onto this? So these are the calibration, algorithm strategy onto which the research work is happening. So this is very, very important from the efficiency and CO2 reduction one. The circularity part, which is as you I think indirectly questioned us that, are we really working?
Right.
Everybody is working, probably. And then what is that? Like there are 4 pathways, materials, energy, life, and usage. These are 4 pathways onto it right now the work is which is happening. And that work is actually going to transform the vehicle architecture going forward. And then there is a methodology called a life cycle assessment. Like if I had to produce a vehicle with, say 20,000 part, how much CO2 I have actually emitted while producing that part. Suppose if I'm saying I'm using a bumper, how much CO2 I have emitted during the production of the vehicle. So life cycle assessment methodology right now is actually underway, and many OEMs, I think Tata Motors is definitely spending a lot of R&D efforts around that to estimate life cycle assessment of CO2, and then how to minimize it, how to reduce it through the circular or a sustainable materials which are now going in the part of the vehicle, in addition to the scope 3 emission which is coming out. So the work which is really happening, energy efficiency measures are happening, and soon I think the vehicle architecture, even if you say the EV vehicles are not going to sustain with, say, central drive. it has to definitely migrate to a e-axles. It has to migrate to a sustainable e-axles, more efficient e-axle like this, and then definitely optimizing the optimizing the battery energies, and then working on say higher charging currents, working on say rightly placed battery packs, a modularization aspect of the battery pack. This is what I think the architectural changes happen toward the circular part of the vehicle designs and everything. This is what I thought so.
Very interesting. I think a lot of work happening in that space, and also what is interesting to understand is, slowly, gradually, we are possibly transitioning towards it. May take some time, but kind of we are definitely transitioning towards it. So thank you very much for patiently listening to us. I don't know if we have any time for a question from the audience or, okay, fine. So we'll conclude, and thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.